Good day, Internet.
Good day, Internet.
Good day, Internet.
Good day, Rod.
Internet.
Hey,
how's it going, guys?
Good
Hey,
to have
Simmons.
you. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
You are probably here for what has been the most requested topic of the past 2 months, which is 10 password managers. People have been saying, like, when are you going to tell me what password manager I need to use or what I need to do about my password manager ever since that LastPass thing broke in December. So here it is, folks. We're finally doing it. Thank you, Rod, for being here to help us do that. I am going to start the show now, unless there are any objections.
I do not object.
Motion carried. Here we go. In 3, 2. This 10th year of Daily Tech News Show is made possible by its listeners. Thanks to all of you, including Eric Holm, Carmine Bailey, and Vince Power. Coming up on DTNS, Rod Simmons is here to talk about LastPass and what you need to know if you want to switch. Plus, Microsoft brings Bing AI to Windows, and Signal threatens to Brexit over an anti-encryption law. This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Redwood, I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Joining us, the host of the SMR and Barbecue and Tech podcast, and what I would say is a security professional as well, Rod Simmons. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Do you describe yourself as a security professional?
You know, it's funny, most security professionals don't describe themselves that way, but yes, I work in security all day, every day, and have for a number of years.
You sound like a professional to me.
Sounds like you professionally do security things, so yeah, there we go. Well, good. You're the man we need to talk to then. Also, folks, Mobile World Congress still going on. OnePlus saying it's going to launch a foldable phone later this year. That's all there is to that story because they didn't tell us any other things. So let's get to the quick hits.
When Google launched the Pixel Watch back in October, it promised it would also add a fall detection feature. That feature is now available in the personal safety app on Android. So on a detected hard fall, the Pixel Watch will wait 30 seconds. If it doesn't detect movement afterwards, it'll vibrate, sound an alarm, ask the user, do you need assistance? And if there's no response after a minute, it will automatically call emergency services.
The European Commission sent Apple an updated preliminary statement of objections. This is part of its antitrust investigation into the company's relationship with music apps. The new statement dropped a previous objection that Apple requires music apps to use its in-app payment system. It will no longer object to Apple requiring apps to use its in-app payment system. Kind of a big deal there. The objections, however, will focus on Apple's anti-steering rules. Those are the rules that prohibit app makers from telling users about other ways that they could pay for a service, like, hey, go to our website to subscribe.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said that the company formed a new top-level product group focused on generative AI. The group will initially work on building creative and expressive tools and eventually focus on developing AI personas. Zuckerberg said it's exploring experiences across WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram, of course, all Meta companies, including text, images like creative Instagram filters and ad formats, video, and multimodal experiences.
On Tuesday, NVIDIA released RTX Video Super Resolution. This is an upscaling technology that works inside Chrome and Edge browsers to improve any web video by sharpening the edges of objects and reducing video artifacts. So videos anywhere from 360p, pretty low res, and up to 1440p can up-res to 144 hertz frame rate and upscale to 4K resolution. NVIDIA's Shield TV already had this. If you're like, hey, don't I have that? If you have a Shield, yeah, you do. But updates to the Chromium engine have now let NVIDIA expand it to the RTX 30 and 40 series cards.
Man, I know it's probably lower res, but I've got some VHS videos from high school that I would love to clean up somehow.
Yeah, give it a shot.
I know, right? Qualcomm and Thales announced certification of the first user-ready integrated SIM, or iSIM. It offers card-free digital signups and security like an eSIM, but it's built into a phone's main processor, so there's no dedicated chip that's needed to be added. Might save space, maybe a larger battery, maybe even possibly save you some money, or at least save the carrier some money. No word on which phones will use iSIMs first, but since they support the same remote provisioning standard as eSIMs, providers don't necessarily need to update their systems. They could just kind of roll it out. So as soon as a handset comes out with the hardware, it should work.
All right, that is a look at the quick hits.
We have quite a bit of Microsoft news to look over today. The company has been busy. So first, PhoneLink is coming to iPhones. PhoneLink mirrors a lot of your phone's functions on the desktop, so you don't have to pick up your phone to use them. Say you're already cranking on your desktop, they will be mirrored there. Things like text messages, notifications, phone calls, stuff like that. So starting now, some Windows insiders can use the PhoneLink app with iPhone to send and receive iMessage messages, and also make and receive phone calls, and also view notifications that would otherwise just be on iOS. However, there are more limits on what the iOS version of PhoneLink can do if you want to compare it to the Android version. For example, you can't send pictures and messages, you can't participate in group chats from the desktop, and you also won't see any message history that wasn't sent through PhoneLink itself.
In addition to that, a Windows 11 update has come along, only for Windows 11 though, which adds screen recordings within the snipping tool, tab support for Notepad, and updated Braille display support. The headline-grabbing one, though, is the Bing icon is now showing up in the taskbar's search box. You can already search Bing in the taskbar. This lets you do the chat thing. If you are in the access group that can chat with Bing, you can hit that Bing icon in the taskbar, start chatting with Bing in Edge. You can manually install the update now or wait until the automatic one, March 14th. That's when the monthly security update will begin to roll out to everybody else. Rod, any of these get you excited to fire up the old Windows machine as soon as you get the update?
Yeah, all of them actually, both of them actually. So I'll start with the first, which is what excites me about that is typically for some people who are Windows users, iPhone users, and the only thing keeping them using a Mac is I can get my text message on my phone because I can type faster on a full-size keyboard. It's super nice. Knowing you can do that on Windows, I think is fantastic. But what you get with ChatGPT and with Bing, and what I love about them most is, and I think if you haven't played around with it, if you're not, I'll say the perfect writer, like I always will write something up and I'm like, I don't like the way it sounds. I'll say, Rob, or I'll send it to a marketing person, say, can you clean this up? Now I can just say, reword this, and it's, oh my gosh, this is great. I sent it to the marketing. I did that, and I sent it to a marketing guy. He's like, this sounds great. I was like, yeah, I know it does. So I think both of those are going to be like huge values for people at work because they can write really great content, or at least write okay content and have someone do the cleanup for them.
I love the idea of the marketing person saying, perfect, no notes. Wait a second. Oh, shoot.
They probably sent it to the same place and said it came back with the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I do wonder if this is a little early to have this concern, but if people start using this Bing engine a lot more, and it's now tied into your taskbar, do we start to have little rumblings, little murmurings, little complaints about Microsoft and its 82% desktop domination tying in a search engine?
I don't think so. You'd hope not. I mean, because if you think about like Google's dominance that they have, I'd say in the classroom with Chromebooks, like my kids all use Chromebooks.
Yep.
And it's interesting if you talk to the kids, what they like is on some Chromebooks, specifically the Google ones, there's a quick button to access Google search, and it bypasses search history. So if the kids are in class and they're searching up answers, if they click those buttons, they don't go into the school search history, so they don't realize the kids are searching for answers. So you still get that same level of capability on Chromebooks that are very dominant and popular, and Google's baking their heavily dominant search engine into heavily dominant phone, heavily dominant Chromebooks that are at the educational level, like K through 12. So I think it's good.
So what you're saying is Microsoft baking its search engine into Windows, Google baking its search engine into Chrome OS, Apple needs to start a search engine.
Yeah, or just keep the relationship. I mean, with the relationship they have with Google right now, which is they pay Google a king's ransom to put.
Yeah. They also pay Bing.
King's ransom.
They pay Google for some search, and they pay Bing for search that comes from Siri.
Yeah.
So they're like splitting the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't think Apple. Well, they probably eventually will need to get there, but probably not just yet.
Yeah, no, I'm curious about that. But yeah, the PhoneLink stuff obviously limited because of iOS's own limitations. But great is I know Wild West Dan was saying he uses messages.google.com all day long. You know,
I'm with him 100%. It is a tab that I have open all day long. I have one open right now. My wife was texting me as we started, and do I need to pick up your son? No, he's already home. So message.google.com is a killer if you're an Android user.
Yeah, I have a few friends who are iPhone users, but also use Windows for work. So that's like a primary computer that they're going to be sitting in front of most of the day.
Yeah.
And I said, check it out. And they were like, really? Wow. Seriously? Oh my gosh, this is going to improve everything.
Yeah.
Well, think if you're a WhatsApp user, I mean, 90% of us use either, you scan the QR code, so you have either the WhatsApp app or WhatsApp web. Everybody, if you have a full keyboard in front of you, you'd rather type on that. And I can say, I think for me, this is huge. I wish Apple long ago would have just put iMessage on every single platform, because
I know
things like WhatsApp would have never really gained steam because everybody can do iMessage. So I think it was a miss for them on that one.
they could have left you green if you weren't on an Apple device. It still had their little blue bubble situation if they wanted.
I would have been totally fine with it as long as I could have used iMessage. And yeah, I'm on Android now, so it's not a big deal for me anymore.
One last Microsoft thing. They expanded the PC Game Pass service to more markets. Preview is now available for 40 new countries. It includes countries across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Users can get access to the Xbox Insider Hub app. Broader launch is coming in the next few months. Service now available in 86 countries. So if you've been waiting for it to come to your country, go check out. We have a link to the Engadget article that lists all the countries it's coming to.
All right, let's move on to some encryption talk. In fact, we're going to be talking about it a lot on the show today. Let's start with this. The UK Parliament has riled up providers of encrypted services yet again. In an effort to combat child sexual abuse material, also known as CSAM, the UK Online Safety Bill would require such providers not to encrypt information in a way that would stop regulators from being able to see what's in them if they need to. If they think something really bad's going on, we need to help. That's the idea. The government's impact assessment of the bill goes farther, though, saying that companies must take steps to mitigate the risk that using end-to-end encryption would stop regulators from being able to identify CSAM. This is an old story. We have talked about it multiple times. The government can say that it's not banning end-to-end encryption, but also we know that end-to-end encryption means only the user and the intended recipient can read those messages. If you require the government to be able to read that information, or anybody, by definition, there are not ways you can then implement end-to-end encryption. It breaks down at that point. But don't let that stop you. You can use end-to-end encryption as long as you can figure out a way to do that. And then also let the government peek somehow, just to, get rid of the bad guys, right? The bill even funds 5 organizations to find ways CSAM can be detected and addressed within end-to-end encrypted environments, while still ensuring user privacy is respected. To that I say, good luck.
To that, Signal said goodbye. Encrypted messaging app Signal said in no uncertain terms it will not operate in the UK if it has to weaken end-to-end encryption in any way. Signal CEO Meredith Whitaker told Ars Technica, "We would absolutely exit any country if the choice were between remaining in the country and undermining the strict privacy promises we make to the people who rely on us." And just today, a German encrypted email provider, or at least I noticed it today, called Tutanota, took its own approach, writing on its website that if UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government wants, quote, to stop people in the UK to use strong encryption, he must block access to Tutanota, just like Russia and Iran already doing. So basically saying Russia and Iran already block us. UK, you want to be next? Listen, I don't know much about Tutanota, but it certainly reflects the rhetoric out there. And Signal is used by the British government. So if they were to just pull themselves out of the UK, it would cause quite a stir. Rod, is there any compromise on issues like this? Is there a way for the government to be able to stop the bad stuff, but not transgress your privacy?
God, I wish there were, but there's not. And I think it was the Signal CEO who probably said it best, which the same mechanism you'd want to do to weaken the encryption can be even within the company who has access to those keys can exploit it. Law enforcement can have overreach to exploit those, and attackers who gain access to that backdoor mechanism for law enforcement can exploit that. So any mechanism you do to try to reduce encryption, it's no matter end to end, it's a bad idea. So I think, and the idea that, well, you could do it on-device scan, which I think Apple had looked at doing with CSAM, and they backed away from that idea because it was just too invasive of analysis of devices. So unfortunately, the genie's out of the bottle with end-to-end encryption, and if you force certain apps to do that, there'll just be other ones that'll pop up that people will just go over to. And as a Signal user, I'm super happy that Signal has taken such a strong stance on protecting user privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought people maybe overreacted a little to Apple's on-device scanning, because if you remember, what they were doing was saying, hey, you're about to send an image. It kind of looks like it might be, an offensive image that maybe you shouldn't send. Are you sure you want to send it? That's something you can do entirely on the device, and no one but the device holder would know about it. There were other parts of that method that involved notifying parents and everything that also caused people to object. If you are looking at this bill, if you were to tell people, hey, look, what you're about to send looks like CSAM, maybe you don't want to send it, you're only helping the perpetrators at that point, right? You're actually not catching them. What the UK wants to do is say, we want to be able to look at a message after it's been sent and say, oh, that person sent an offending message.
Right.
And there's just no way to do that without breaking encryption. At least nothing I could think of.
Yeah, so I like the intention. I do get the intention. I think the problem is, as soon as people start talking about child pornography, everybody wants to kind of jump in.
Definitely.
And we want to try to figure out a solution. And it's a horrific thing that happens. But what if you could catch someone, I don't know, trying to manufacture bombs, or trying to sharing information about how to do things with bombs, or if trafficking, human trafficking in general. Like, there's all types of reaches, and the problem we'll have is it'll just be, well, we just want to go an inch further, until at what point in time they just want to inspect and look at every single thing that people are communicating. And the intention is great, but privacy is privacy. If you need to inspect what someone is doing, get authorization to get onto their devices. Having the person sitting in the middle is probably not the right point, because then at some point should we go to everybody who sells email encryption keys and say, hey, you can no longer have clients that support end-to-end encryption, and if the emails are sent through your servers, you have to find a way to decrypt the emails, where I'm using my public key to send an email, and we're trafficking back and forth.
Yeah, you can do that. Just make sure the government has a key that they can use too, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly what they want.
The government is like, let's just try triangulation. We want you to be encrypted, from sender to end user, but we also want to make sure you're not doing anything super bad. So maybe just make sure that we're also part of the conversation.
And we promise not to look unless we have a really good reason.
Yeah, you have to give us a really good reason, or we just have to come up with one.
Yeah. Did you say just BCC the government on everything?
Yeah, make it easy.
Yeah.
Here, get everything.
Why not at this point?
There was a book. Oh gosh, what was it? It was I think it was Dan Brown. He did a book where the CIA was gathering all different communications, and it was just such massive volumes of data. I cannot remember. It'll come to me later. But and essentially it took down one of their servers trying to decrypt a constant stream and volume of data.
Yeah.
Oh, it was definitely a Dan Brown book, but I can't remember the name.
That sounds very Dan Brown. Yeah. I mean, and encryption's math, so you can't really outlaw it. You can just make using it illegal, but like you said before, people who want to encrypt their things are going to find a way to do it. Folks, what do you want to hear us talk about on the show? If you haven't checked out our subreddit, there's a great community in there submitting stories, voting on those stories, talking about the stories. Let us know in our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. LastPass disclosed more details about how the attackers were able to access customer encrypted password vaults. One of the criticisms when they announced this in December is they didn't give details. They have now finished their investigations and published a lot of details. I'm going to give them credit for the transparency, at least in this particular case. The attackers used information stolen in other breaches to take advantage of a remote code execution vulnerability in a third-party media software package. Ars Technica has sources that say it was a vulnerability in Plex, and there was a vulnerability in Plex around that time. They then were able to install a keylogger on a senior DevOps engineer's home computer. That let them grab the employee master password to their corporate vault, which then gave them access to the encryption keys and all kinds of other stuff. But the encryption keys needed to access the AWS S3 production backups. The valid credentials made the access difficult to detect because it was legitimate, and it wasn't for a couple months before AWS Guard Duty alerts finally detected the intruder when they tried to use cloud identity and access management to perform an unauthorized activity. So as best they can tell, they were in the system from August 12th, 2022 to October 26th, 2022. A lot of people were wondering this, like how far back did they have access to the vaults? And it only goes back to August. So in light of these more complete findings, LastPass recommends that users make sure they are using a strong and unique password on their vault. Change default PBKDF2 iterations to at least 600,000. Review all the passwords in their vault for uniqueness and strength. Turn on dark web monitoring to look for matches, and enable multi-factor authentication. Here's the clincher. If you're already using multi-factor authentication, LastPass also recommends regenerating your shared secrets because part of the things that they got out of AWS were MFA seeds. Rod, these are things most people are not going to do, especially regenerating MFA secrets, checking PBKDF2 iterations. You and I will do them. Sarah will do them. But there's a lot of people out there that their eyes will glaze over and they just won't get around to it. A lot of people in our audience just want to know who to switch to. They just want to get off LastPass. Before we get to that, though, I want to know your take as someone who works in security. How do you feel about how LastPass handled this?
So I'll start with, I've been a LastPass user, was a LastPass user for about 12 to 15 years. So and mind you, I love that product. I've recommended it to so many friends. For me, the issue with LastPass isn't that they got breached. It was the speed at which they disclosed information, and I felt like it was trickled out too slow. Because if we'd have found out very early on of a breach and said, "Hey, we lost vaults, go change your passwords," I'd have changed my passwords on LastPass and moved on with life and never given it a consideration. The fact that a developer was hacked, I can live with that. Those things, they happen. They happen to. I mean, I'm a Marriott user, and Marriott's been hacked. So,
yeah, right.
Okay, there. The bigger challenge is, as I was reading through this article as to what's happening, I'm like, how did you guys not detect this for 2 months? I mean, just the abnormal behavior. And mind you, it's the credentials that the user needed to do their normal job, but were they doing it at that same volume? Like if someone was downloading all the vaults, wouldn't you find it abnormal that this admin is moving vaults off in that mass? Like that should have triggered something. So that's where I'm a little concerned that probably their security wasn't as tight as one would desire it to be. But for me, it was 99% disclosure. I lost trust in the organization, which is what forced me to move elsewhere.
I would add to that, like the fact that they lost vaults and it involved a home computer means there probably weren't some best practices being followed there as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Should people rely on password managers? I've heard a lot of people say, well, this proves that password managers are a bad idea.
Password managers are still better than not using one. I mean, I made the joke before that someone could come up to me and say, "Tell me the first character in your Gmail password," and if you had a gun to my head, I couldn't tell it. I could guess, but I legitimately don't know. And for 99.9% of my passwords, I couldn't tell you the first character in them. So password managers are still great things to lean on because it does get users having better passwords and less things that, I mean, if you've ever looked at Have I Been Pwned and looked at the number one breach, the top 50 breach passwords, they're all horrendously awful and easy to crack. And what we're trying to get is users to kind of be more knowledgeable. And then with most of the platforms like LastPass with the security challenge, or 1Password with, I think they call it the Watchtower. They all can let you know reuse of passwords, which most people don't catch that they reusing passwords if they're manually typing them in. But more importantly, if they're known breach passwords, you can also pick up on those or on the dark web. So all of those types of things are so valuable with a password manager that you don't get by putting it in, some type of encrypted vault you're managing on your own.
I mean, the LastPass story has unfolded over time, and we know more now today than we have in the past. And like you said, there are other options. You can say, yeah, you know what, that was just too little too late. I'm moving on to something else. However, this could happen to a lot of companies. And because of this, one would think that LastPass goes, we've learned a lot from our mistakes. We are stronger than ever, and keep trusting us. There's some merit to that too, right?
Yeah, I think some merit.
I'm right here.
Oh, yeah. So
Get on it, Tom. Sheesh. I mean, just in the sense that, we hear about breaches all the time and companies saying, here's what we now know. Here's what we will not allow to happen again, hopefully in a perfect world.
How much credit do you give LastPass for that? I think, is that what you're asking, sir?
For just disclosing?
Yeah.
I think for just disclosing, it's fantastic. Again, it's first you have to disclose quickly. That's the most important. And that's where we've seen most security companies fall down in the past. It's been either lack of disclosure or too slow to disclose. And that's where, I think there were a lot of SSL or companies that were providing encryption and doing encryption that got kicked out of browsers because of just either poor management, poor disclosure from Google, Microsoft, and those things. So I think that's the first most important. It is great that they're becoming transparent, but I think it's after massive backlash and users deciding that they're not going to use it. I mean, when you start looking at users who've been around with you for a decade more, who are now no longer logging into their vaults, deleting all their credentials out of their vault, that's problematic. And I think they know. And not to mention, LastPass, they were getting very large in the enterprise market, and knowing that companies are actually having to re-look at their security policy and posture and might have to make moves off of LastPass and go elsewhere. That's a pretty big hit for them. So I think disclosure, fantastic. And I think they're doing the right thing now, but they should have done the right thing a while ago. And it's okay that the story is evolving as they learn more. Totally fine with that. But I should have known about the breach as early as possible so I could take the most evasive action as possible.
Last question. Do you have a recommendation for people moving off to LastPass yet? Is there an alternative that you like to recommend?
So it all depends on the type of user. If I were talking to you, Tom, I'd probably say go with Bitwarden. You probably would be very happy there. For me, I went with 1Password. And you probably think, well, why the heck would you recommend Bitwarden if you went with 1Password? So with Bitwarden, I thought it was a fantastic password manager. It's definitely a little rough around the edges. There are certain things that I felt that I was stumbling across getting done. However, with 1Password, the reason why I went that route for myself is I wanted a family plan. I wanted family sharing. So I wanted all of my kids, my wife, I wanted us all to be able to easily share credentials, be on a single password manager, pay one price throughout. I'd say if you were debating on the switch, start with Bitwarden and verify it won't work for you because it's free to get started. There's a really good run rate where you can trial it out. 1Password, you're kind of getting into, you don't have a lot of run rate for trying out the solution before you're into a paid model. So for me, I went 1Password. There's a lot of things that are not LastPass and it frustrates me, but I'm learning to use 1Password for what it is.
Excellent. All right, before we get out of here, let's check the mailbag. Let's
do it. Mike in Dubai wanted to add to Chris Christensen's travel tip from our Friday show on February 24th. Mike writes, on that show, Chris Christensen mentioned trip mode on Mac OS and asked if there's an equivalent on Windows because he didn't know because he's a Mac user. Mike says if a user goes onto any Wi-Fi connection, they can toggle between metered and unmetered connections. I don't know all the details about what downloads happen automatically in metered mode, but it minimizes Windows software updates until you return to an unmetered connection, which is the default. I set up my phone hotspot as a metered connection while traveling.
Oh, nice tip. Thank you, Mike in Dubai. Good stuff.
Indeed. And thanks to everybody who emails us cool tips like this. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is where to send those. We welcome them and thank you in advance. Also, thanks to you, Rod Simmons, for being with us today. Could not have done the show without you, and we mean that. Let folks know where else they can keep up with your work.
Yeah, so I hang out with a couple clowns. I know Rob and Chris are come over here often on the SMRPodcast, but also Chris and I run a podcast called Barbecue and Tech. And I do appreciate someone in the chat said Bitwarden does have a family plan, and I did know that, but there was something about their family plan that I didn't like. 1Password. I'll have to look that up, and I know I talked about this on the SMR podcast before. So
yeah, you did a nice, good, deep review on SMR. Folks should absolutely go check that out. I also, unrelated to LastPass, really enjoyed the Barbecue and Tech episode you just did about the cutting boards, because I have a cutting board that you made that I bought from y'all, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to clean it, and your cleaning tips and everything were really good in there too.
Oh,
so
cool.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
Oh,
no problem.
Gosh, I don't even want to talk about how my cutting boards probably should be cleaned better.
You should listen to this episode.
That's a story for GDI at another time. We do want to thank our brand new boss, Les. Les just started backing us on Patreon. Thank you, Les, and welcome. We're so glad to have you.
It keeps the streak alive. Thank you, Les. Who will pick up Les's baton tomorrow? Patreon.com/DTNS. Patrons like Les get to stick around for the extended show, Good Day Internet. We're going to talk to Rod some more about how to do the move, what you should do when you want to move off LastPass on to another password manager.
But just a reminder, we do the show live. You might be listening to us after the fact, and that's fine. But if you can catch the show live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC, we'd love to have you. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow with Scott Johnson joining us. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Excellent show. And thank you, Rod. Appreciate that. I actually might end up with 1Password just because I have multiple users. We use 1Password as part of the company, to share amongst Sarah and Roger and I, just passwords we need for this. Mm-hmm. And 1Password seems like it's better for that than Bitwarden, but I do have to look at it closely because those are the two I'm kind of down to for sure.
Yeah. So what I didn't like, and mind you, Bitwarden is, for me, it was great.
Yeah.
There were little nuance and annoying things that I didn't like, where like trying to do like managing of credentials and having to and moving things around. I just felt it was very cumbersome. But there was little things I could get over. 1Password, I don't want to say it's a lot better, but there were creature comforts for people who don't really care about the tech side of it that I think you would love as password manager. The one thing that jumped out to me when I started using 1Password, sorry if I just go off on a rant, the multi-volt item option I really like, and the way I used it, I will ultimately only use one vault plus a shared with the family. But what I did is I took my entire LastPass vault and migrated to a vault called LastPass. Then, as I changed the passwords, I moved them from one to the other. Mm-hmm. So that way I knew what I started, like these are the old passwords. So if it's in here, it means I need to do something with, and then I change the password, move it over, change the password, move it over. So yes, I moved 400 items or 376, whatever the exact number was. Mm-hmm. But the point was I was able to start with a clear list of what I needed to work on and get them transitioned over. And then my vault that I used to call LastPass is now deprecated. So that's, if the first tip I'd say is try to make sure you have a good firewall that separates out the old and the new when you migrate them into whatever password manager you go to.
So is it a bad idea to just migrate and then change passwords under the new one, or are you saying?
No, that's exactly what I did. So I migrated I exported to a CSV from LastPass. Then I imported into 1Password. I did the same thing with Bitwarden, but imported them in to a separate vault. So in 1Password, there's a vault called like private, like this is mine. I created a new vault called LastPass, and I migrated into there and then changed and moved. So I wanted to make sure
that way you knew which ones had been changed and which one hadn't. Really
exactly.
Easily. Yeah.
It was a cleaner approach for me.
Yeah. No, I like that.
The other tips I would have, I'd say everyone knows, start with your money first. Like anything that touches money. So if you have like a banking, 401k, all those accounts, credit cards, anything that truly touches money, start with those accounts first. But don't ignore your email accounts. Like what I did was I tried to figure out many logins are email addresses. So I tried to figure out which logins were tied to email addresses. And I started with the ones that, like, I made sure I changed all the email addresses, but then went through the money first and anything that stacked to money, because if you could get to my email, then you could change the password.
Then you could reset everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're screwed anyway. The other thing that, when I was doing the password changes that probably jumped out, well, there's a lot of things that jumped out as me, but I don't answer security questions with true answers. I copy the security question, put it into the notes in my vault, and then create a random password and use those as my answers. So if it pops with a question, I just go to the vault, look up the answer, and then paste it back in.
Ooh, that's a smart tip.
Yeah, until the vault is compromised, and they potentially could have your answers and all
now
that.
you have to change all the security questions. Yeah,
and like backup codes. Like when you start thinking that you have when you're doing MFA, so you have backup keys and codes. All your backup codes, I would put the backup code on that item. So if ever needed it, I could go to that item and get the code. So they had not only the secret questions answers, but they also had my MFA backup code, so that they really could become me. It was just like little things that it was very convenient to put it there. But now I've done a separation of church and state for backing up MFA codes, as well as for doing the backup for my secret questions for sites. So any site with secret questions are stored in a different location. They're no longer stored in my vault, just because it was a great idea and it was convenient, but I moved away from that.
Yeah, I also don't answer. I hate it when they ask security questions and they don't give you an option to just not have one, because I just look at them as another password, right?
But it's one that someone says like, well, this is like an extra measure, but I'm not really going to think of it as a password. It's something that is more likely to just be able to be looked up.
It's a less secure password. Yeah. Exactly. So I have my own method of doing it, but I don't store them anywhere, which runs the risk of me forgetting them, which has happened. And I had to call my bank and prove who I was once when that happened. But yeah, those security questions, I just wish people would just I wish we would just get rid of passwords, I guess, and then it would all be over.
Yeah. I mean, even like I know 1Password, they're coming out with support for pass keys. Yeah. But it's still, I'm just storing another secret in one system. And I know it's not a password, but I know it's better. I know it's more secure, but still I'm going to need help managing pass keys. And I know I could do it in iOS. There's hundreds of options, but when passwords go away, I'll be super happy. But one thing I would say, and I'm skeptical on this. There might be people I should say I'm skeptical on it, but I've tried using it on less critical sites. So one thing 1Password does have is managing MFA. So the MFA is tied on the credential. It's a super slick option. But as I just said before, if you compromise my vault, you have my username, my password, my secrets, my answers, and then now I'm going to put the MFA code right on the item in the vault. But like the integration of how it logs you in, it's butter. Like you just click a site, logs in, the MFA code appears, it just pastes it in, and you're in it. It's no different than doing a password. It's a fantastic experience, but I feel it's like that one bridge too far. That it's not really multi-factor if I'm getting it all from one location at that point.
Yeah, right. There's a certain amount of inconvenience I will tolerate in order to diversify the attack surface. And that's one of them is I'm going to keep my multi-factor separate. In fact, separate from any company. I use Authy because of that. I'm like, hey, Authy is not, it's not Microsoft, it's not Google, it's not anybody. I prefer to use like a YubiKey if I can, but of course that not everybody supports that.
I love YubiKey. I have a bunch of YubiKeys sitting right here.
Wow.
I mean,
you got a fistful of them.
Yeah, I haven't even opened them. That's probably only like, I think there's like another 9 in my drawer, but I have YubiKeys like literally scattered all over the place. And it's only because if one, like I had one that broke on me And I had a backup, which was fine, but I said never again. I bought a whole bunch of YubiKeys, and they just sit in a drawer. So if I have one that goes bad, I just take a new one and put it in. But I have every form factor you can imagine for YubiKeys for every device. It's a fantastic device, and yeah, I do like YubiKeys.
Always register 2 of them. Keep one safe. That's a good tip. Yeah.
And I also would say if you use YubiKeys, put one in your like I have one in my travel bag. I have one that's always at my desk and one that's in my computer. So I always know that I can get to one. So that way, if I travel and I have my travel bag, but my laptop gets stolen, I have my YubiKey because I have got burned where I had to wait till I got home to get to a YubiKey to do something.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Just stick it in whatever backpack or bag, laptop bag.
Yeah, 90% of people they don't know what it is or they don't know where you use it. So
yeah,
but yeah, YubiKey is definitely a fantastic device.
Do you have all those YubiKeys because you get them like at conferences and stuff, or did you just buy all those?
I've bought most of my YubiKeys, and then I've had some given to me over time. But yeah, I think there's probably like 10 or 15 in there. So probably I'd say probably at least 5 or 6 were at least given to me.
Okay, I was going to say that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not inexpensive, but also because I was testing, so I started playing around with the NFC versions of YubiKeys. I was working with a government agency, so I needed to play around with the ones that could put DoD certificates on them. So I've done like just tons of different like playing around and testing with them over the years. They're great devices. I want to play around. They have a YubiKey that's an HSM, but I can't justify the paying for that just to play around with it. So
yeah, that's cool. And they're so much easier now than they were. They used to be just USB-A back in the day.
Yeah,
which meant if you were dealing with a phone, you're out of luck. But now with NFC and even some Bluetooth stuff, which you may or may not want to have Bluetooth involved. Some people don't, but they're easy. They're way easier than they used to be.
They definitely are. But yeah, I like it because it's something I have. I press a button and it just spits the code in.
Yep.
And I don't think about it. I think the challenge with the way some MFA works is I hate typing in codes.
Yep.
And that's why I say the 1Password integration is nice because it types the code for you. When you get it with text, if you're using iMessage or using messages.google.com, you can copy and paste it. Or if you happen to be lucky on device, you can just click copy and then paste. But I think people just over the old days of RSA, football tokens and reading 6 digits out and typing them in. No one wants to type those things anymore. We're trying to get quicker as we can.
Someday our children will wonder how we lived typing in 6-digit codes and remembering passwords.
Well, push. I mean, think about that. If you're using like Microsoft Authenticator, Google does the same thing where it just pushes to your device. Says, "Is this you?" You click yes, approved. That's equivalent to doing the code. To me, 10 times move me there. But some sites, when you register, depending on what you register with, or they don't support it. Like I was on my corporate Microsoft one. I'm like, I'm sick and tired of this thing sending me the codes. And it was just the lazy factor of I didn't go in and look and said I'm using Microsoft Authenticator and just toggle it from code to push. And I kept saying I need to go do this. And then I get stuck on emails or get stuck on a call. And then one day I was sitting next to the IT guy and he's like, "Why are you typing in a code?" I was like, "Let me just fix this now." 2 seconds later, my life was 10 times better because I just switched it over. But I suffered for a year just because it wasn't annoying until the time it came up. And then the annoyance went away immediately.
There was one time I had left my Android phone at home when I went on vacation by mistake. I usually always have 2. And I was trying to log into Nest to see the dog. So it wasn't like a super a critical thing, but whatever, I guess I was on my laptop and it noticed I was on a hotel Wi-Fi. Well, it actually noticed I was on VPN and said, "Hey, that's not your usual IP address. Log in again." And so I log in and it was like, "We've sent a notification to your phone." I'm like, "I don't see it." Oh, it sent it to the wrong phone. And for some reason I could not, even though I could get into Google with my other phone, Nest was like, "Nope, we're only sending it to that phone." And I was like, "Well, now
we know what you don't have."
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, "I guess I won't be looking at my cameras for this trip."
And if it makes anybody feel better, I'm like you, Tom. I do have two phones. I have a work phone and I have a personal phone. Again, I like to keep those things separate because when the workday's over, I can put it down. But I also, with international travel, my work phone is the one that as soon as I get outside the U.S., that phone, I'm using that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, dual phones. I'm with you 1,000% on two phones.
And then I was able to go and set up the other phone on there so I could get the notification on either phone. But yeah, it was.
The other thing that MFA that scares you is that if you get excited when you get a new phone and you like, oh, I'm going to get the new phone, I'm going to reset. And then you pull it up, you're like, oh my God, MFA codes, what am I going to do? So there's nothing worse like when you have to go back to all the sites and re-register.
Yeah.
Because the current it doesn't transfer. Microsoft does a good job. I think Google does a good job. Duo does a good job. But some of the MFA products, if you're not logged in, they don't transfer from device to device, and that really can burn you, especially if you're excited iPhone user opening the box and then hitting reset to put it in and send it off wherever you're trading internet.
I hadn't even thought about that when I got my latest iPhone is not the 14, it's the 13, but I got it last year.
Yeah.
And same thing, I'm like, iCloud backup, we are good. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I need to get into Discord on mobile. Oh no.
And you don't realize until weeks later. That's the problem.
Exactly. Nobody's going to be like, do you want to really do this?
Yeah.
It's just going to be huge hassle for you.
It's not in the wizard when you set up the new phone. It doesn't remind you of that.
No. And, there were a couple platforms where I'm like, just fix it. And there were a couple where I'm like, I still, on mobile, I don't know, I find ways around it, but I'm like, I have to figure that out still. Stupid 2FA.
Yeah,
my original Mastodon account, I did 2FA with Google Authenticator. This was 5 years ago, and it was the one thing I didn't switch over. Like I got tired and was like, oh, I never really used that. I'll switch that later, and then I never went back and switched it. Forgot, got rid of that phone. And so that somewhere out there is Ace Detect on a bird site Mastodon instance that I can't get into.
So someone did comment that they use Authy for backing up their 2FA codes.
Well, Tom, you said you
check
did,
this out.
right?
This is
they sync it from device to device for you so that it stays in sync.
That's nice. I'm gonna have to check this one out. I hadn't played around with this one, but I'm gonna have to give this one a look.
And when they do the cloud sync to do it, they encrypt it, so it's been audited and signed off by some folks who've looked at it and say, yeah, that seems pretty safe. It's not constantly doing it. But yeah,
always great tips.
Mm-hmm.
Always great tips.
I think even Google Authenticator has something like that now. It didn't for the longest time.
Yeah.
But
I know like LastPass, I used theirs, and when you'd log into your LastPass thing, it would go ahead and kick anything you had in there. It stayed. Microsoft is really good, so that's usually my go-to one. That my Microsoft stuff, it just stays. I relog back, and the only ones that would ever go away when you reset devices are corporate ones that they have a policy they go away.
Right.
But for the most part, any other vendor, they don't care. They want them to stay on device so you don't lose them, or stay with the Microsoft account you're using.
I have had a lot problem with LastPass's own authenticator. I only have it for LastPass. I don't use it for anything else. Where it will give me the push notification on my watch.
Yep.
And I will say, yes, accept, and nothing happens. I do not get logged in, which I'd rather have it fail that way than the other way, I suppose. But yeah, it's annoying. I usually end up having to go to the phone and get Google Authenticator, which is where I have my other MFA for LastPass. Because it just fails. And then once it's failed, it's like, now you're starting to look suspicious. You keep asking for that over and over again.
Yeah, I used it for LastPass. I used to use it for Facebook, but I switched over to Microsoft for Facebook. And I used it for when I was in Denmark, I had to use a COVID pass. And there's a website I had to log into to schedule my COVID test and get the results. And I used it for that, which I'll never use it for again, which is good. But I will. The other thing I was gonna say on 1Password there, pray. the one super cool thing is I hate saying does screen scraping, but if you use the desktop app, when you want to register a QR code, if you just go to the site and the QR code appears, you just hit scan and it scans your desktop, finds the QR code, scans it, drops it in, and the codes just appear. Blown away with how super slick it was.
Yeah.
I still don't like it because it puts too many things in one basket.
Yeah.
But their implementation is spot on. Like they really hammered that one.
Yeah. I like it becoming easier, which is why I like FIDO and the FIDO Alliance and passkeys and everything. But it needs to become easier very carefully because otherwise you got all your eggs in one basket again.
Yeah, you just again, it's the take the baby steps as to the direction you want to go with those. But I was gonna say, as you start thinking about cleaning out your vault, the other thing to think about is you mentioned it early is what can I delete and get rid of. That was a big lesson for me as going back to I don't use this anymore. And I didn't just delete. I often went to the websites and said delete my account or unregistered, so I didn't have an account there. And then I could delete the credentials out of there. So. But
I don't even know how many passwords I have in the manager. I haven't.
I have a lot.
I feel like it's endless.
Yeah,
I mean, to the point where I'm like, this goes beyond a weekend project. To really, like
627.
Yeah.
So
and you kind of go through it's like, okay, my bank and there certain accounts where I'm like these are the important ones.
Email, money, and then less critical down the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a way I did it, and again, it took me about 2 full weeks to get through it. I wanted to get it done in a week. I'm constantly on phone calls and conference calls, but usually a call is wrapping down and I would be sitting there on a call and I would just change. I would if the call was ramping up or wrapping down, that I'd done my part, I would just be changing passwords. So there's always this buffer where, we're waiting for so-and-so to get here. Let's give them 2 or 3 more minutes. Password changing. Or when if a call wrapped up and I was waiting, I have 3 minutes before I join another call, I would just do a couple quick password changes. Or if a call was especially now, because if you had a call that ran long and people were like, hey, let's take a quick bio break, 15 minutes, let's join back in. I would get to the bathroom, get my drink, and then I'd be just doing password changes. So it was something I just did little over time, because you don't need to do it. Nothing sucks more than sitting down in the evening with your laptop changing 50 or 100 passwords. It's just better if you can get 2 or 3 done here or there, but over the course of a day, you might look and say, man, I changed 30 passwords just by normal working today. I didn't interrupt my work day. I did them when I had those minute or 2 that I couldn't get into an email, but I could get to a website, reset a password, and then click save and then be ready to go. So,
just chip away at it slowly. Yeah.
A little harder for you guys because you're doing pre-show stuff and getting prepared. You actually have to pay 100% attention with everything you guys are doing.
No, but there's other times that I have down that aren't work related to this. Just sitting in a doctor's office or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at people's scores. That's the other thing that LastPass did really well, is that their scores told you how you ranked. You were the top 94 percentile.
The gamification.
You were better. Yeah. One password only gives you just a general score. My score is 11. Where's that? Come on, 1187. But I don't know how good that is.
But you don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's just a number. So I don't know. Is 1200 the highest, or is the highest? I literally, my goal is to get to the absolute highest score that I can get from them. So
I have a very bad LastPass score, and it's because, and I know exactly why it is. I have had that situation happen where I have 5 entries for the same website, because over the years, LastPass thought I was creating a new login because the URL was slightly different.
Maybe that's why my score is so bad.
They've gotten LastPass has gotten better at detecting that, over the years, but in its early days, it did not do it at all. And so, I've got 6 entries for Yahoo, all have the same password, and LastPass dings me for that. They're like, hey, you're repeating your password use.
Sure,
and I'm like, not really. That's all the same website. It's just slightly different URLs.
So LastPass had a concept where it was equivalent domains, which they managed, but you could add other equivalent domains in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of the reuse, I think with equivalent domains they didn't recognize it. But I was very diligent about cleaning up my vault, so that I didn't. Whenever it said, what both of them do very poorly is if you say I have a duplicate password, but let's say that this says like 26 duplicates. Well, just tell me what you a duplicate, because the reality of duplicates, if you had 26 duplicates and it says that you have 13 duplicate passwords, it's likely if I just change 13 sites, the other 13 are fine. But if I change from the top to the list to the bottom, I could run into where I changed the first one and the first one, the second one shared, the second and the third one shared, like where literally I wind up changing 26 versus 13. So I'd say duplicate passwords suck, but I wish they would just say these two are duplicate, these two are duplicate, these two are duplicate, so you can clean those up. But
the other thing I run into, this is a very me problem, is it'll be like, oh, you have duplicate Google entrants. And I'm like, no, I don't. I have my personal Google login. I have a Sword and Laser Google login. I have a alternate login that I want to keep around. So it was too much work. I just have a very messy vault.
Sometimes when I'm going quickly, where it's like, want to add this or update this to LastPass, I'm like, yeah, I do. And that's not seamless. For example, I have my saralane.com domain, that I use for a variety of things, mostly email. And if you type sarah@saralane.com into LastPass, there's a cornucopia of things where I'm like, that was not even what I did.
Yeah.
There's the one, I know how to look for it, but it's that sort of, and this is a Chrome extension, so your mileage may vary, but you just gotta keep a look on that stuff.
After 4 years, I finally got around to editing the entry for the gas company, because they changed the login from being your phone number to your email address at some point. Yep. And I had just been manually doing that every time I logged in, because LastPass would auto-populate the phone number, and I'd just be like, no, that's not right. Finally changed that. It's just, it's
Turns
one of those
out with
things
a
where
password manager, you require some management.
You have to manage them a little. I know.
Yep, you do.
Exactly.
Yep, managers on managers.
In fact, there are sentiments like that echoed in our title suggestions. Shall we take a look at the title suggestions?
Let's do it.
I'm so glad you didn't say no. Showbot.tv/DTNS2. Our top vote getter is from Larry in Atlanta. Managing password managers. It's exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
Et2UK from Stoic Squirrel about the encryption law. When encryption is outlawed, only the government will have encryption, and bad actors. Go ahead. We won't look. I don't know. Do you see any others in here you like?
I mean, I think everybody, our encryption conversation resonated, because they're pretty much all about encryption and security and privacy and password managers.
So Roger, we went with Managing Password Managers by Larry in Atlanta.
Correct.
All right.
Awesome.
For Good Day Internet, for the longer show, we have not picked one yet. JPEG84 suggested death by 1,000 passwords.
I voted for that one. I liked it. I just liked the idea. Not that I want anyone to die or have 1,000 passwords.
And Saray suggested a fistful of YubiKeys.
Oh, gone.
That's a shame that I have that many of those things.
It's impressive.
Well, I really should have stopped buying them a long time
I like to
ago.
think that Stealth Dave's suggestion of my two phones is like my two dads.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It could be lots of things, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I'm going to go with. Stealth Dave.
Capalicious, on behalf of Capalicious, Wild West Dan submitted Pain in My LastPass.
Not to
Oh,
be
that's-
confused with Fergalicious. Capalicious is different.
Pain in My LastPass is pretty good, too.
That's funny. That's a good one.
Don't keep all your passwords in one basket. Gosh, there's so many good ones. I don't know. Do either of you have a favorite?
I hate to say I really do like Pain in My LastPass a lot, because it's just funny.
and very on point. Yeah. Well, let's do it. So Pain in My LastPass is the title. Now, I have done things backwards today, and I apologize to Joe right now because this is supposed to be the last thing I do is the title selection, and I got all out of order. So I will congratulate Capalicious once again after I thank all of the patrons who support us at patreon.com/DTNS. Again, thank you, Les. Welcome. I hope you're able to listen to this episode now that you're a new supporter.
Yeah,
and
yes.
John gave us a raise. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate that as well. All right, over on the Twitch side, let's see. We've got Norm Fazekas resubscribing for the 37th month. He wrote, "Where's my 6-year DTNS mug? 5 and 7 miss it." Okay, we'll try to get on that for you. The Infotech Gamer gave us a follow. Welcome, the Infotech Gamer. Matuba resubscribed at Tier 1 for the 33rd month. AJ Fagan resubscribed with Prime for the 20th month. GPEG84 at Tier 1 resubscribed for the 37th month. We also got Brian M64, Rabbit41, Zoe Brings Bacon giving us bits. Lion Jim Video has a watch streak going on. Shared that. Thank you, Lion Jim Video. Calypso9 for the 32nd month. Gotham Heights for the 22nd month. Lots of y'all in here today. This is amazing. PC Miles cheering us with bits. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us. All right. Congratulations, both Wild West Dan and Capalicious, for your submission of your title, and we'll see you all later. Goodbye, everybody. We're gonna see you all later.
We're going to see y'all later, and you better have a good day, Internet. Until then.
There we go. There's the
Good
music.
day,
Thank
Internet.
you. Goodbye.